months in prison for obstruction, lying to Congress, and witness tampering, but Trump says there's a chance at exoneration. Trump argued that many other high-profile individuals have gotten away with worse crimes, including former rival Hillary Clinton. President Trump calls the U.S. a nation of redemption.
In many cases, we want to rebuild their lives. They want to rebuild their lives. They want to help us.
Speaking in Las Vegas, Trump said the U.S. is also a country of second chances. He was invited to address a graduation ceremony for a program that helps former inmates re-enter society. Trump also praised bipartisan congressional passage of the Criminal Justice Reform Bill in 2018. The coronavirus outbreak is having another negative impact on Wall Street. At the closing bell, the Dow Jones fell 128 points to 29,220. Brian Shook, NBC News Radio.
Vote Denny Antoinette Mozingo for 42nd State Assembly on or before March 3rd. It's the people's time. We need a strong voice in the 42nd District that works for the entire district and will push for every resident on either side of the mountain. As a state assemblywoman, Denny will be the champion and voice for people of color and those without a voice. She'll be the voice for seniors living in the streets, for single mothers struggling to care for their children, and for veterans struggling to survive in a country they bravely defended. Denny Antoinette is running to bring programs to the most vulnerable among us, create competitive jobs, and to ensure a great quality of life for the people of the 42nd Assembly District. And he believes in affordable universal health care, education, equitable housing, sensible gun laws, and protecting our environment. It's our time. It's the people's time. Vote Denny Antoinette Mozingo for 42nd Assembly on or before March 3rd. Learn more at dennymozingo.com or Google Denny Mozingo.
Paid for by Denny Antoinette Mozingo for State Assembly.
California Headline News. A vigil is planned in Porterville tomorrow night for two fallen firefighters. The two died fighting a blaze at the city library Tuesday that officials believe was intentionally set. Dave Lapierre is the Porterville Fire Chief.
There's been just an outpouring of a lot of support from every fire agency, this community, up and down the state, just to help us in our grieving time.
Two 13-year-olds are in custody accused of starting the fire. Mayor Martha Flores says the community is heartbroken. Governor Gavin Newsom focused on housing and homelessness in his second State of the State address yesterday, calling the homeless crisis a disgrace.
There's nothing compassionate about allowing fellow Californians to live on the streets, huddled in cars or makeshift encampments.
Newsom called for the removal of regulations that prevent construction of new shelters and more affordable housing. Plenty of weddings taking place today on 0220-2020. San Francisco and Redwood City town halls holding numerous ceremonies. Low 70s for the Bay Area, low 80s in Los Angeles. Rain moving in late to mild. Dennis Lambert, California Headline News.
America is a great big country
Filled with all kinds of different people.
and we all count.
That's why the 2020 census
Wants to make sure we're all counted.
Why is it so important?
Because the census helps inform how hundreds of billions of dollars will be spent each year for things like
new roads,
Health clinics.
even more school programs.
So make sure you're counted.
Because you count.
Shape your future. Start here. Learn more at 2020census.gov. Paid for by U.S. Census Bureau.
This is the Frells family. They live on a piece of land they call greener pasture, and they work on it behind the wheel of a John Deere 1 Series tractor. With its durable construction and features that hook up to dozens of attachments with ease, no job is too tough. The Frells family runs with us, because this is more than just land. It's home. Nothing runs like a Deere. Get a 1 Series tractor for just $99 per month at your John Deere dealer today. For additional cost information, please call toll-free 855-633-2315.
It's time to say see you later, alligator, to embarrassing and troublesome issues with your skin, nails, and hair with all-natural Cayman alligator oil. Cayman oil is locally made, right in Louisiana, where people have been using alligator oil for centuries to treat all kinds of ailments. A drop a day of Cayman oil can help you say, see you later, alligator, to athlete's foot, nail fungus, acne, eczema, rashes, dry skin, cuts, infections, MRSA, scars, burns, sunburns, and even ingrown hair and dandruff. If you or someone you know is tired of suffering with any of these skin, nail, and hair troubles, you need to visit mycayman.com to learn more about 100% natural, non-toxic, hypoallergenic Cayman oil and get a bottle today. Say see you later, alligator, with Cayman alligator oil at mycayman.com. That's mycayman.com. mycayman.com.
Are you ready for a new experience? To see life from another point of view? new hope, new expression, new joy. This is your radio hour. Welcome to Viewpoint with Father John.
And welcome. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John. I am your host, Father John Reed. You can follow us on Instagram or Facebook at Viewpoint with Father John. Also, if you missed the show, you can catch it later in all past shows on YouTube. Just in the search bar, put Viewpoint with Father John, KCAA. All of God's children are endowed with extraordinary purpose and ability. I'm on a quest to help as many as possible in fully realizing their divinely inspired potential. Disposing of false narrative and embracing genuineness inspires clarity of purpose. My role is to help overcome self-imposed limitations in realizing one's spiritual potential. And also, I want to tell you about a good place in Claremont. If you're over there, you need some pharmaceutical goods, go and see Dr. Nikki Ho at Claremont Pharmacy. She's a good friend of mine. She takes care of all my diabetic concerns, and she'll get you fixed up. And a shout out to my friends Rosie and Gabe at Coffee Bean and Tea Leaf in the Claremont Village. These guys take care of me. I'm working on a new, that's not my voice that's going like that. So, anyhow, they take care of me while I'm writing a new book, and they get me my latte and make sure that I have a nice place to sit, and they don't tease me too much about my bad spelling. So, having said that, glad you're with us. I do have a sad note tonight. A dear friend of mine passed last night, Mr. John Hackworth. He was a servant of the community. John was a lieutenant with the Laverne Police Department. He retired, but he had a heart attack last night, so if you keep his family on your prayers, I appreciate it. Tonight is kind of exciting for me. I have someone who I have a great deal of respect for who will be our guest. It's Sifu Paul Schroder. And Paul has been training in the martial arts for over 35 years. He holds a master's black belt in Kung Fu Sansu. He is currently a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Has 12 years of Wing Chun experience and is certified in Yang System Tai Chi. Paul is a martial artist himself, first and foremost, with extensive training experience in Aikido, Muay Thai, Western boxing, Taekwondo, Kale, and Krav Maga. We say it differently in California, but Krav Maga. Paul's passion infuses. Sorry about that, Paul. I'm screwing you up left and right. I'm sure glad.
You're fine.
I'm glad you can't get a hand on me here. He teaches a lot of places. You know what? He's one of the good guys, and some of the people he's studied with, I've known. Master Dave Hopkins, who also was a student of Al Rubin, and of course a student of Jimmy Woo, who, when I was a child, I actually got to meet. So welcome to the show. I'm sorry I only got in half of your stuff there, but you know, when you're dealing with the mentally incapable, this is what you get. So welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for that welcome, and I'm really honored to be on your show, and I also want to offer you my condolences on the loss of your friend.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, it's an honor for me to be here, and I was really pleasantly surprised and excited to be on your show. I've kind of watched you from afar through the years, and I really like the work that you've been doing in different different ways with people and bringing genuineness to your spiritual path. And I'm very grateful for what you do, and I'm happy to be here.
Well, I'm honored. Thank you. Well, one of the things I really like about you, because I've watched you as well, is you're authentic. And I did a little short video that went on Instagram and also LinkedIn today, because I thought people might be wondering, this spiritual program, why are you having a martial artist on here? And I said, because there are many spiritual paths, but also one of the things that I love about you is you help people find their inner voice and their inner strength. That's spirituality in a nutshell. It's finding the inner self, the true self. And I don't know if you agree with that or not, but I see that in you quite a bit. And the fact that you've been doing this for over 35 years is pretty impressive.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, thank you for that. And yeah, I agree with you, and I believe that first and foremost, my path is a spiritual one. And although the type of martial arts that I've always gravitated toward have been the more practical kinds, I see martial arts as an opportunity for personal transformation. I see them as a tool for spiritual development for the people that feel called to them, for sure.
Right.
That's most important to me, too.
Yeah, and I would agree with that because it's not for everybody, that path. And I see that in religion as well. You have those who spend time trying to force their way onto other people. You have the kind that say, I'm going this way, and if there's something there for you, join me. Or let me join you. And so, that's very important. May I ask what drew you to the arts in the first place?
Sure. It's funny that you asked that. I had a young lady sign up in my school just last night, and her mother asked me, "Can you please tell me your story of why you chose the martial arts?" So it's interesting to hear that question again 2 days in a row. But
sure,
the first thing that drew me was a sense of being able to feel empowered. My upbringing was a little bit challenging. I had a lot of father figures in my life that were kind of harsh and at first, at least for me as a young person, kind of bad examples. And I really felt disempowered by those relationships that I had. My birth father was abusive. He was an alcoholic. He was a drug addict. And my mom made the great choice to leave him. And the next man that she chose to marry, although he was a very good man to her, was kind of harsh and verbally abusive. And so I had this cycle of these types of role models. And then I remembered going to see the Karate Kid. The first Karate Kid with Ralph Macchio and Mr. Miyagi. And there was something about that student-teacher relationship that really spoke to me. It was quite powerful to see that, just like my story, here was this kid that was disempowered, and he meets this teacher who teaches him to be centered and balanced, and stand up for what's right, not to be a violent person, but to stand up for what you believe in. And that just set me on a path. I knew what I wanted to do, so I would wake up every morning, go out in the backyard at 5:30, and I would do, karate moves that I saw in movies, try to do front flips and, put a bandana on like the Karate Kid when I was 11 or 12 years old.
Sure.
And my stepfather said, "All right, he's going nuts. Let's take him down to the Sansu school." So he took me down to the Kung Fu Sansu school because my sister's boyfriend, his name was Matt Carnes, was a Sansu black belt with a man named Dennis McClellan.
Oh,
he was a really, really tough guy. Did you know Dennis?
Not personally. I know the name.
Yeah. So he was my first instructor, and William Vigil, Billy Vigil, was one of his students who was a phenomenal martial artist at that time.
Yes, he is.
So, so I got a chance to really be a part of the Sansu community. I think it was in the early 80s. And it really did something for me. It really empowered me. It helped me kind of find my voice, and it was something that I enjoyed. It had a certain level of, artistic expression to it as well.
Yes.
It allowed me to feel like I could defend myself. And as I grew up, I went to a very rough high school in Paris, California, where there were a ton of fights every day. Went to Paris High School. So it gave me some tools to, not get ground into dust as a fifth wheel. So it was kind of this first dawning of being able to be empowered by something. I would say that drew me to it.
Sounds like he did for you what Bill Lassiter did for me. I was 7 years old when I met Bill, and was getting beat up like you wouldn't believe because I lived one block away from the Calaveras gang, and I was not Hispanic.
Right.
And Bill taught me the importance of not being angry. And guys like we're talking about, they don't make a big deal out of it. In fact, it wasn't until after Bill died and I started talking to other practitioners that I was just one of hundreds, if not thousands, of people that Bill did this with. I mean, Bill used to pick me up for my Kung Fu lessons on Saturday morning because my mom worked, and then on the way home would take my brother and I to get a hot dog and a Julius. You remember the old orange Julius's?
I do.
And
I do.
So he was losing money on it. But he cared that here's a couple of young kids that needed help. And it sounds like this is the experience that you broke in with as well. Would that be an accurate statement?
It's accurate. And, in addition to Dennis and Billy and these guys that were just, larger than life to me, these fighters, was also a man named Ben. I forget his last name, and I hope Ben gets to hear this story. But my stepdad, my mom's third husband, chose to move us out far to a ranch that was far away from my kung fu school, and I didn't see a way for me to train. And this guy Ben was one of the students there at Dennis's, was also a part of our local church, and he decided that he would come out and get me and bring me to the school and then take me home.
Wow.
Which was a 45-minute drive for him one way. And during those times, we would talk. We would talk about life. We would talk about the martial arts. We would talk about mindfulness, inner peace, spirituality. And he showed such an interest in me that it really left an impact on my life. Someone cared.
Yes.
That someone there that saw this journey as important for me to take and wanted to facilitate it. So I have to say that he was one of the instrumental people. And interestingly enough, when I got my master's degree in Kung Fu, he showed up and watched me get that award.
Oh, wow.
Which was kind of like a full circle experience for me. That happened in 2005. So I was already in my 30s at that time.
Now, for people who don't understand the system, to become a master in Kung Fu Sansu, first you have to be an 8th degree black belt. So you don't just become a master, you have to achieve this first, which is a lot of years of studying. And I think it's important for people to know that because I think people see in Hollywood, in one frame, people are white belts, and 20 minutes later, they have a black belt.
Right. After an 80s montage plays in the background, right?
Yeah, and people don't realize that there's a big gap between how many people make it from white to yellow and then even to green, and you right. start starting to weed out who's going to stay and who's not going to stay. And it's not that they're bad people that don't stay, but there's a certain dedication you have to have and a certain core thing for the art. And we're coming up to our first commercial break, and so I'm getting a little signal here through the window, and Rick is saying me that I'm your new guy and you're going to do it this way. So anyhow, so we'll be back in 2 and 2.
Sounds good.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
Vote Denny Antoinette Mozingo for 42nd State Assembly on or before March 3rd. It's the people's time. We need a strong voice in the 42nd District that works for the entire district and will push for every resident on either side of the mountain. As a state assemblywoman, Denny will be the champion and voice for people of color and those without a voice. She'll be the voice for seniors living in the streets, for single mothers struggling to care for their children, and for veterans struggling to survive in a country they bravely defended. Denny Antoinette is running to bring programs to the most vulnerable among us, create competitive jobs, and to ensure a great quality of life for the people of the 42nd Assembly District. And he believes in affordable universal health care, education, equitable housing, sensible gun laws, and protecting our environment. It's our time. It's the people's time. Vote Denny Antoinette Mozingo for 42nd Assembly on or before March 3rd. Learn more at dennymozingo.com or Google Denny Mozingo.
Paid for by Denny Antoinette Mozingo for State Assembly.
It's time to say see you later, alligator, to embarrassing and troublesome issues with your skin, nails, and hair with all-natural Cayman alligator oil. Cayman oil is locally made, right in Louisiana, where people have been using alligator oil for centuries to treat all kinds of ailments. A drop a day of Cayman oil can help you say, see you later, alligator, to athlete's foot, nail fungus, acne, eczema, rashes, dry skin, cuts, infections, MRSA, scars, burns, sunburns, and even ingrown hair and dandruff. If you or someone you know is tired of suffering with any of these skin, nail, and hair troubles, you need to visit mycayman.com to learn more about 100% natural, non-toxic, hypoallergenic Cayman oil and get a bottle today. Say see you later, alligator, with Cayman alligator oil at mycayman.com. That's mycayman.com. mycayman.com.
And welcome back, friends. You are tuned to KCAA Radio, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John. I am your host, Father John Reed. And just a reminder, this is a listener-supported program, so if you like what you're hearing, please go to viewpointwithfatherjohn.com and click on the support button and give whatever you can. Those of you who've been supporting the show, I thank you very much for that. And I want to introduce you to the new man behind the board. Rick, come on the microphone here.
Well, I am on the mic. I'm not exactly new. It's been like 18 months that I'm here.
Yeah, I know.
So almost 2 years now, actually.
But it's the first time I've seen you awake, though.
Yeah, well, that's because of getting up at 4:30 in the morning. No, I'm celebrating my 41st year in radio this month.
Well, congratulations.
So I've been around a little bit, and it's always a pleasure to see you. And I miss seeing you on Thursday nights, but getting up at 4:30 in the morning, doing the morning show on the FM side, it's a little hard. But tonight's a special night for me and Miss Cheryl to be with you tonight, and I really appreciate it.
Well, I love having you, and thank you for jumping in and getting the driver's seat there. And again, my guest this evening is Master Paul Schroder. He's with the Kung Fu Sansu School in El Paso, Texas. And welcome back, Paul.
Thank you. Thank you, Father Don.
And so we're talking a little bit about some things that I was particularly interested in what Ben did with you, talking about mindfulness, because that really is important, I think.
Yes.
This is just my opinion, but I'm right.
Yes.
that if you don't have the mindfulness, you don't have the rest of it.
I completely agree, and I always saw that element to martial arts as being crucial, at least for my expression and study of it, was this aspect of mindfulness and paying attention on purpose to whatever's happening. Not only is that important for a warrior, but I think that's important for anyone on a spiritual path or in any sort of endeavor, is to pay attention. And there's something very special that happens when you do that in terms of a spiritual practice and also just in everyday life. So yeah, for me, I started to get drawn towards Zen and Zen meditation.
Good.
I definitely don't make a hobby horse of that for my students necessarily, because some of them are Christians or Catholics or whatever their faith
community
is. I don't want to interfere with that. However, some of them, do come and talk to me about starting a meditation practice. And a few years back, I got ordained in the Zen tradition to be a Zen teacher.
Good.
And to teach meditation. It's something that has been really near and dear to my spiritual practice now for over 15 years, and something that we do introduce to our students from time to time.
I think that's very important. And I start my day with an hour of prayer and meditation, mostly meditation, and I take from both East and West. And, of course, being Eastern Orthodox, it's kind of the eastern side of the Eastern
Right,
Western.
it's the east side of the West.
But Thomas Merton, who I'm a big fan of, he learned a lot from Master Suzuki on Buddhist meditation. And when you come down to it, truth is truth is truth. It doesn't matter what name you put behind it. And God is big enough for all this that I can see, and at least that's been my experience. And that kind of mindfulness, the early desert fathers and mothers really practice. In the Western Church, it got lost until Thomas Merton brought it back in the 60s. But I'm with you 1,000%. And I can remember my son asked me one day, he'd been my altar server for, well, since he was old enough to ring the bells. And he said to me one day, Dad, would you be upset if I became a Buddhist? I said, no. It's all spiritual expression. I said, and I showed him my library. I had all these books on Zen Buddhism. There's different forms of Buddhism. And I said, and you don't have to change one to the other. You can combine them. Whatever speaks to your heart, what matters is you're showing up, and whatever you do with mindfulness and be present.
Right.
So I think sounds like that's sort of what you're doing, if I'm hearing you correctly.
Yeah, it absolutely is. You know, I mean, I was raised in more of a fundamentalist, evangelical Christian tradition. And, you know, I started to become attracted to Zen, but not despite my relationship with Christ and the Sacred Heart. I studied a lot of Greek Orthodoxy during that time. I was ordained as a pastor in the Christian tradition.
Wow.
Through Calvary Chapel, so I can marry him and bury him in two traditions now. So
get him on both sides of the fence.
Yeah, I guess, right? So, I mean, it's just so interesting. People freak out when they hear that, but yeah, I started to move toward Zen meditation, but I still, of course, have great respect for Christ and you know, for the Sacred Heart, and also really gained a huge respect for the Catholic tradition and the Greek Orthodox tradition and the contemplative tradition. You know, there was a lot of centuries that the contemplative Catholics and the Buddhists shared a lot of information together, practice together. Of course, you know, you mentioned Thomas Merton, who I'm a huge fan of. Also Thomas Keating, who teaches centered prayer. Huge fan of him, who's more contemporary now to us. And because some of these monks were having these more transcendental type of union type experiences while they were praying, and they were seeking some sort of description of them, and they found, you know, pretty detailed descriptions in the Buddhist tradition, and so they were able to kind of incorporate some of that wisdom and still remain Catholic, you know, still remain true to their faith, but see the wisdom. And when I first started Zen meditation, actually, it was with a small group of Unitarian Universalist Church here in El Paso.
Yeah.
And I would say about out of the 10 of us that would meet on a Tuesday morning to learn how to do this Zen thing, 4 of them were active Catholic priests in town that wanted to learn how to meditate.
Yes.
Yeah. So I mean, it really did come full circle for me in a lot of ways. But yeah, it's been quite a journey.
Another author you might be interested in is Anthony DeMello, if you're not already reading him. He was he's raised in India and entered the Society of Jesuits at the age of 17, and he brings together Hindu, Buddhist, and Christian stories. And one of the best contemporary retreat directors that any of the churches have known, in my view, and I use him quite a bit on retreats that I lead, because I try to let people know that wherever you're hearing it, it's still God.
Yeah,
and
agreed. And
Jesus would be just as happy with any of it. There was a great book I read, Buddha Zen, Buddha Christ, something like that. But it showed all the similarities, and there's differences too, but the idea is whatever you're doing, do it with your full heart, your full mind, your full body, so there's no separation. And
yeah. I think that, is it Living Buddha, Living Christ?
That's it. Thank you.
Yeah, that's Thich Nhat Hanh. It's an excellent book.
I'm a big fan of his.
Yeah, me too. And I think you're right. I think that this is maybe more in American culture gets lost, is that the spiritual disciplines are much more crucial than we have all our theological ducks in a row. You know, I mean, the disciplines of, you know, having a daily meditation or prayer practice of, you know, touching that every day, so that it transforms us, and so maybe hopefully we can do something good for others, you know, and really reach out and serve other people with a better perspective, you know. So yeah, I mean, you said his name is what was the name? I'm sorry, I'm learning something here from you. I really want to make sure I remember. What's his name?
Anthony DeMello.
Okay, and I'm writing it down.
and I would, and on Facebook, I'll shoot you a message with it. And
Perfect.
Especially his book Awareness is a wonderful book. You know, where I come from, where they thought, when we heard of religious discipline, we thought that was a nun wearing leather. But so,
Right.
you know, that's I know.
No, not that kind of discipline.
I'll pay dearly for that. I know. I hear FCC writing letters right now.
No. Yeah.
It's getting hot in here. But
Yeah.
but there's so many great authors. And I'm glad you said Thomas Keating, because he just passed this last year.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
And you can get a lot of his lectures on YouTube. I've read just about everything that man has written, because I just can't get enough on the centering prayer. And
Right.
I'm not doing it for the gaining of more knowledge, because we just stuff ourselves with knowledge. It's so I can increase my practice.
Right.
And,
Right.
And it's just like people who go from karate studio to karate studio to karate studio, just try and get more knowledge instead of getting practice and the discipline.
Yeah, and going deeper. You know, I agree. I think it's, you know, you can jump off the hot seat a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have people that do that in spirituality, and with people that do that in martial arts. You know, they stay just as long enough. They stay long enough just to learn a couple things, and then they jump off the hot seat. You know, when something is demanded of them, or they, well, gosh, you know, I really have to, you know, make a go of this. It's easy to kind of jump off that hot seat and try something new, and never really having to go deep into anything. So, I think that's really important.
Well, that describes a lot of our relationships today. You know, we got to keep it exciting. Otherwise, you know, well, you were exciting for a while, and now I got to jump to the next one. And so it translates into every area of our life if you think about it.
True.
You know, that's one reason, and we were going to talk about this tonight, but when you're dealing with a guy with dementia, you never know where the conversation is going to one
It's been good so far. So. Just so you know.
But
great.
a lot of people, they get involved with extramarital affairs. Is one of the reasons that it doesn't work out is because after you're no longer sneaking around and now you're together, the excitement's been gone.
Exactly.
And so now you got to try to find it somewhere else instead of finding out who's the person with you. And, you know, I'm fortunate, you know, being an Orthodox priest, I am married, and I have an incredible wife. And one of the things that makes it incredible is something my friend Chuck Chamberlain taught me years ago. He says, you know, we're not the same people we were yesterday. He says, you never heard me speak before. And I'm thinking, I've heard you speak many times. He says, no. He says, I'm that person you saw yesterday. Would yesterday's experience and knowledge added make me somebody new today? He says, it's the same for my wife. So my job each day is to find out who this new woman is sitting across from me. And you have an incredible wife as well. I mean, and you both work together, and I love seeing the photos of the two of you together because you can see the happiness. You can tell when a couple's together and they're smiling because they're in front of the camera, and you can see when they're smiling because they are in sync.
Well, I appreciate that. You know, we've been married for almost 24 years. We're coming up on our 24th anniversary.
Congratulations.
And, thank you very much. And you know, as you said, as we've grown and changed, we've tried to keep that together. And as life, you know, continues to progress, of course, it offers challenges. But
yes,
I am her biggest fan, and she is my biggest fan, and we have each other's back. And even when we don't particularly like each other, we try to make it clear that we still love each other.
Well, when Gabby and I were first dating, we went over to Graber Olive in Ontario, which is one of my favorite places. I grew up in Ontario. And in the back shop, they have two shops, but the back one, there's this lady who was in her 90s, and she shared with us that her husband just died a few months before. They'd been married over 70 years. This is a true story.
Wow.
And so she looks at Gabby and I straight faced, and she says, you know, in all that time, not once did the word divorce ever come up. Not once. Homicide, but not divorce.
Homicide, yes. I love it. I love it.
Give me that old-time religion, man.
It's true. It's true. Yeah, and I mean, after 24 years, of course, it's changed, but we have more of a sense of being committed to each other than we ever have, and a lot of that is understanding and just having a great respect for the history that we've shared together and the life that we've shared together. You know, there's been a lot of good times and a lot of bad times, but
say that again.
There's been more good than bad.
Say that again. That's important. The respect.
Yeah, it is.
Wow.
It's the respect.
I didn't mean to interrupt you there, but I thought that was such an important thing and prophetic thing you said about good times, bad times, the respect keeps you together.
I believe that wholeheartedly, for sure.
Boy, that's powerful stuff.
Yeah.
And so what are your ventures right now? What are you doing right now these days?
What are my adventures?
Yes.
My ventures? Well, I'm continuing. I'm studying Zen with a very good teacher that I meet with once a week.
Good.
And so a very, very, very good teacher, very wise teacher that we Skype with. And so I'm really enjoying that and going deeper with that. I am also continuing to try to take my school to a level that I can grow it to have a staff and provide a lifestyle for other people to be able to make a living and make a lifestyle out of the martial arts. So that's my next move with the school, is not that it just be a mom and pop place for my wife and I to make a living, but for younger generations to come up and be able to step into it and be a part of it and also make a living and have a lifestyle of the martial arts. So our new venture with our school is to make it a place that also provides livelihood for other martial artists that come after us.
Oh, nice.
So that's our new big venture with our business, at least, is that.
Well, yeah, and I think that's important because the more you give, the more you have.
Yeah.
And a lot of people miss that in the business world. As things get tight, they start doing less and less. Well, try breathing less and less and see what happens.
Yeah, exactly.
And those are the times you have to reach out. A friend of mine used to say that crisis time is awakening time. It's a time that you find new answers for old situations. And when you're providing that to these students coming up and showing them, and Sansu's a family anyhow. That's one of the things I've always loved about that art. It is a family. And the majority of people in there are giving people, not all of them, but the majority. Every community has a few people that don't get that message. But the majority of them that I've known, I've always seen them reach out. I can remember years ago when I was teaching, Rusty Wallace offered to come down from Sonoma, California, to do a demo for my school. He knew I didn't have any money. He says, "Don't worry about it. If you could help with gas, that'd be great. If not, don't worry about it. We're in this together." And we grew up under Bill together.
Right.
And that's deep stuff. So it thrills me to hear you doing that, because that is what a true master does.
Well, I got to tell you, I mean, my biggest example and my biggest hero and my biggest mentor has been Master Dave Hopkins, for sure.
Good man.
Yeah, he really, really is. And in so many ways. I mean, just my life mentor, my business mentor. He'll always call me his little brother.
Yes.
Which is the energy he brings to me, because he just respects me and loves me. But just so much more than that he's been to me. When I walked into his school for the first time, I was about 23 or 24 years old, and I'd trained at different Sansu schools. But the energy of his school was so different. And I think it was probably a lot the way Bill Laster's school was for you, where I just felt this immediate connection of family. And I just felt like, here's a man who he's teaching martial arts, but he really cares about people.
Yes, he does.
And and just the ways that he would just subtly give things to me, or sit and share time with me. He wanted me to teach him guitar, so I would sit and teach him guitar, and we'd just talk for an hour. And he didn't have to do that. Biz classes were over, time to close up shop. No, he sat with me and talked with me, and then he would call me, and there'd be times that I'd say, "Hey, Dave, I got to go," And here was my instructor, who I respected and thought the world of, and he wanted to talk to me. And it set that precedent for me, and it set that example for me, so that when I went out and I started my school, I had a model to model my business after. And if it wouldn't be for Dave, then I would not have what I have today in my academy here in El Paso, for sure, because he modeled it for me.
Well, speaking of business model, I'm getting the signal. We got to go to our next commercial break, but we'll continue this on the other side. You're listening to Viewpoint with Father John, and we'll be back in 2 and 2.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
Vote Denny Antoinette Mozingo for 42nd State Assembly on or before March 3rd. It's the people's time. We need a strong voice in the 42nd District that works for the entire district and will push for every resident on either side of the mountain. As a state assemblywoman, Denny will be the champion and voice for people of color and those without a voice. She'll be the voice for seniors living in the streets, for single mothers struggling to care for their children, and for veterans struggling to survive in a country they bravely defended. Denny Antoinette is running to bring programs to the most vulnerable among us, create competitive jobs, and to ensure a great quality of life for the people of the 42nd Assembly District. And he believes in affordable universal health care, education, equitable housing, sensible gun laws, and protecting our environment. It's our time. It's the people's time. Vote Denny Antoinette Mozingo for 42nd Assembly on or before March 3rd. Learn more at dennymozingo.com or Google Denny Mozingo.
Paid for by Denny Antoinette Mozingo for State Assembly.
It's time to say see you later, alligator, to embarrassing and troublesome issues with your skin, nails, and hair with all-natural Cayman alligator oil. Cayman oil is locally made, right in Louisiana, where people have been using alligator oil for centuries to treat all kinds of ailments. A drop a day of Cayman oil can help you say see you later, alligator, to athlete's foot, nail fungus, acne, eczema, rashes, dry skin, cuts, infections, MRSA, scars, burns, sunburns, and even ingrown hair and dandruff. If you or someone you know is tired of suffering with any of these skin, nail, and hair troubles, you need to visit mycayman.com to learn more about 100% natural, non-toxic, hypoallergenic Cayman oil and get a bottle today. Say see you later, alligator, with Cayman alligator oil at mycayman.com. That's CAIMON.com. mycayman.com.
AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or on the World Wide Web at KCAAradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John, and I am your host, Father John Reed. And I want to give a shout out to the people listening all around the world, because I do get your letters, those of you who've been sending them from Panama and from Brazil and from the Philippines. It blows me away that you tune in online to listen to this program, and I'm honored that you do so. And again, for the listeners who support this show, just a reminder, go to viewpointwithfatherjohn.com and click on the support button and continue to give what you can. You've kept us here a little over 2 years now, and I'm grateful to that. My guest this evening is Master Paul Schroder, and we were talking about some of our memories. And just real quickly, I want to share a memory about Master Dave Hopkins that I will always hold dear to me. And I think you know the reason I got out of the art was because a chiropractor broke my neck in 2011.
Yes, I heard that.
Yeah, you know, I've always had trouble with women. They always want to wring my neck, and this one did it. But anyhow, when I first started teaching and had my first students, Master Hopkins gave me the instructor's belt, you know, with the yellow lettering and stuff, and I still have that first belt in my closet hanging up there, and I still look at it, and I always have fond memories of how supportive he's always been. And I just think the world of the man. He's a great representative of not just the Sansu community, of which he is, but also just as a good human being.
Yeah, I think so too. I really don't think he allows himself to see the influence he's had. It's phenomenal. And really, there's so many in Sansu. You know, also Master Greg Jones, who wrote the books on Sansu. I talk to him quite frequently, and I call him Pops. I'm his adopted son, and we talk all the time. And just the life mentoring I've received from Greg has, it's just astounding. That man is a genius. He's just a walking encyclopedia.
Well, yeah, we're friends on Facebook as well, so it's, we shoot stuff back and forth, and Greg Costi and all these other guys that they're just, and Dave Weeks and I grew up together.
Dave Weeks, a good guy, great guy,
and his wife Sylvia, they took such great care of Ron Scanlon in his last days. I mean, Ron and I grew up in the art, and I still have bruises on my ankle from his wheelchair.
Yeah.
People are sometimes surprised to find out that there's a priest with a black belt, but when you pass that plate, I don't want to hear change. I want to hear. I want to see paper. I want to see.
There
paper.
you go. You enforce it, Father. You do it. You can do it.
and I honor all denominations: 5s, 10s, 20s. So.
Put your hands on the radio and feel the radio. Send him the dollar bill.
I like it, gentlemen.
So, you have quite a practice down there, and I love the fact that you're growing the art. More than that, if I'm hearing what you're saying correctly, you're growing people. With that going on,
we're trying. Yeah, we're really trying. We one of the important things for us was to sit and write a vision and a mission statement for the school.
Yes.
Which is something I haven't seen a lot of. I've seen some schools do it, but I haven't seen a lot of schools do it. But we thought it would be important. And of course, I was in Christian ministry for years, so a lot of that training really has helped me to kind of, develop a group of people surrounded by a single vision. But yeah, we wrote a vision statement and a mission statement, and our mission is to, El Paso Kung Fu empowering lives. That's what we're looking to do, and to help people and to help them find what they're looking for. And martial arts is so interesting because people sometimes come to it at a crossroads in their life. They've gone through a divorce, or they've gone through a death in the family, or there's been some bad health diagnosis, or they lost their career, they're confused about their identity.
Yes.
And so they come to martial arts to try to find some kind of direction or something within themselves.
Yes.
That they can really pull on as a resource. And so it's just so awesome for me to see that journey happen in so many different people and just watch their lives transform. And martial arts demands that you demand something of yourself, and that's what I tell my students.
Yes.
I tell them, look, I'm just a guide. I'm like a trail guide. I'm jogging down the trail going, hey, there's a rock here, there's a tree there, look at this, look at that. You're doing the work. Don't forget that, You're the one here that, instead of sitting and watching Seinfeld reruns with a bag of Doritos, you're here putting in that sweat equity and gaining that skill that no one can take from you. So that's what we take very seriously.
And we find it's important to listen to those guys. I think of, you take a guy and let's say his name's Ray, and you're coming to a place where there's a dividing road, and Ray says, look, if you go up this one way, there's a bear that will just eat your backside off. If you go the other way, it's going to be just fine. But you decide, you know what, I'm going to take the first way, so you go the way, and you find that bear, but when you're walking back, you notice on the backside of Ray, his backside's already been eaten. And he says, oh, that's how he knew that.
True.
So
that's unbearable.
Oh, man.
But I'll grin and bear it.
Oh, my gosh. Oh, my goodness.
Puns are great. They're great.
Yes.
I love it.
Another thing that can be fixed with duct tape. But that's so anyhow, this is exciting stuff, and I knew when I asked you to come on the show that it would be exciting stuff, because martial arts is not just what people see in Hollywood.
Right.
There's a reason why it's called arts. There's an art to it, and it's also a science as well.
Correct.
And one thing I've said on this show many times is that science and religion are two dance partners that have been far apart for too long. They belong together.
Correct.
And martial arts is the same way.
Mm.
We're combining body, mind, and spirit. Doesn't matter what you call it, whatever your spiritual path is. We're trying to do the same thing with just different expressions.
Right.
Now, I want to touch on another thing real quick, and because we don't have a whole lot of time left, but before you went into other arts, and I think this is important for people to hear, is first you got a base in one art before moving to others. Would that be correct?
That's correct. Absolutely.
And then after you built that foundation, then you added to that foundation, because there's many wonderful expressions. I think it's well, for me, I think it's important to see what's in some of the other boxes around, you know,
Yes.
and not just say this is all there is.
Yes.
And so you have quite a background, but you started with a foundation.
Correct.
So good.
I think that's important, yeah. And, you know, like I said, you know, if you jump around and you become a jack of all trades, masters of none, you know, that really does exist. But, you know, Sansu is my foundation. It's my bedrock. It's the art that all other arts can kind of help.
Yeah.
Sansu, you know, you can do any other expression of art within Sansu. Any other expression of martial art can be incorporated because Sansu's overriding philosophy is whatever works.
Right.
But, you know, you really can't take a lot of what is in Sansu and put it in a boxing template because boxing is a closed system.
Right.
And Sansu is an open system. It's like, okay, look, the point is to survive a sudden violence encounter. So if that means armbar or whatever it is, then you use whatever you can. But, you know, I think about one of my heroes who was Dan Inosanto, who was one of Bruce Lee's big influencers.
Yes.
And someone that trained with Bruce. Dan said, he said, I don't train in the other arts because I think one is better than the other. I train in the other arts for the attributes that they give me.
Right.
And those attributes allow me to create my own art. And I think that way about martial arts now. You know, that each art gives me specific attributes, and my artistic expression of the arts is the attributes that I've gained from what I've studied and what I've learned.
Well, yeah. Well, one of the things I specialized in was pressure points. Yeah. And I can remember I had a friend that was a professional Muay Thai fighter, and I went to support him, and I had a Sansu shirt on, and his coach came up. He says, "Is that Jimmy Woo's Sansu?" I said, "Yeah, I'm second generation, but yeah, I've met Jimmy." He says, "So you know the pressure points?" I said, "Yeah." He says, "Would you come teach some of my students that are going into the UFC some cheats?" I said, "Well, yeah, sure, I'd be happy to." So this big guy standing there, he says, "You know, I don't put much stock in that kind of thing." So I got him one that was mid rib cage and put him on his knee. I said, "Would you like to see that hard?" He says, "No, when you coming to teach?"
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned that because I think for a while there, you know, the sport aspect or the sport expression of martial arts was taking center stage. You know, and it was all about the UFC and the cage, and which is changed martial arts, and
Yes.
there's nothing wrong with that. But I think now you're seeing kind of a curiosity and a return also to the other martial arts, to the more traditional martial arts, and the value that they can offer. You know, there's a reason why they've been around for 3,000 years or 2,000 years. You know?
Yes.
There's a reason why they've stood the test of time because there is some wisdom there. You know.
There's the important part there. You can say it 100 times. I wouldn't get tired of hearing it. There's some wisdom there.
Absolutely.
You know, and most of the guys that I've known, there's some of the kindest, most genuine people who I would never want to run into a back alley against. You know, where you're talking Dave Hopkins, where you're talking Bill Laster, where you're talking many people, Jack Serra, all these different people.
Right.
You know, Jimmy was, you know, of course, Jimmy loved to fight. That's true. But he did enjoy that. But the people I've had the privilege of knowing, and David Weeks is one of them. When people ask me out here, and they're in the Upland area, I say, go to see Master Dave Weeks because he's the real deal. You know?
He is.
And if I was in Texas, I'd be sending them to you. And having said that, how would people get in touch with you if they are interested in following up with you?
They can check out our YouTube page, El Paso Kung Fu, our YouTube page, obviously, but also our Facebook page, El Paso Kung Fu. They can follow us there. We're also on Instagram, El Paso Kung Fu. And if they want to check out our website, it's elpasosansu.com. But yeah, the social media is the best way to see us. We put up videos and self-defense tips and all kinds of good stuff.
And for those of you who don't know, Sansu is SANSOO.
That's correct.
Okay, so because some people, the dictionary doesn't know that one in English. They're funny that way.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's you don't have to make a choice on whether to be spiritual or be able to defend yourself.
Right.
And most people, and I'm sure you would agree with this, is that a real martial artist, his first instinct is to walk away without anybody getting hurt first.
Yes.
And it's
Absolutely.
only when you can't do that that you use yourself, as Bill used to say, and as
Bill used to say. Yeah, he used to say, use yourself, and it's true. You know, the funny thing, just, you know, where you mentioned that there were so many kind people involved in Sansu, it's really true. It's really true. And when you deal with violence in yourself, then you're not projecting it out into the world as much. And, you know, there's when I feel grumpy or I feel a little bit down or depressed, if I go in and I grapple for an hour, you know, or I work out Sansu for an hour, man, all that stuff is just, I'm like, what was I feeling? I don't even remember it. It's just, I worked it out, you know. Better out than in, as they say, you know. So that kind of helps. And then the other thing is, you know, you think about self-defense in terms of, you know, like what Christ said. He said, turn the other cheek, which I still believe is important. You know, I don't need to hit everyone that comes up and tries to humiliate me or say something negative to me. I can turn the other cheek. I can, if you ask for my coat, I can give him my tunic. You know, I can show that side to myself. But it's interesting, in Luke 23, Jesus says to his disciples, he says, look, I'm going away now. You should have a sword. And I think one of the disciples says, Lord, we have two. And he goes, oh, that will be sufficient.
Yes.
So that's actually in the Gospels. And then in the garden, when Peter pulls out the sword and he cuts off Malchus's ear,
yes,
Jesus says, Peter, put the sword away. He doesn't say, what are you doing with the sword?
Right.
He says, put the sword away, which to me says, you know, there's a time and a place. And mostly violence, you know, when it comes to violence, almost always violence is never the answer. But when it is, it's the only answer. You know, there are times when we're called to defend our family or our lives, and if we can, then that's what we should do.
Absolutely, and I think that's a very powerful thing for people to understand. And, you know, just to follow up, one of my favorite spiritual directors, Richard Rohr, who's a Franciscan priest, says, if we do not transform our pain, we'll transmit it. And so martial arts is a good way to learn to transform our pain so we don't transmit it, because the mindfulness is coming back that the problem centers within me, and so it needs to be rectified within me through spiritual, physical, nutritional ways. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. I think that's so true. Finding ways also to work with the body. And if it's not martial arts, maybe it's yoga, or maybe it's the treadmill, or maybe it's take up running. You know, so much of our spiritual life in the West is kind of preoccupied with the mind, which is a part of it, but the body is a huge part of it as well. And sometimes those critters and those memories stay within our physicalness, and so we need to move our bodies in new ways, in different ways, and form our bodies in different ways to kind of like wring out that sponge of that old pattern or emotion. And that's what I think martial arts offers, as does yoga, Tai Chi. You know, we work with a lot of soldiers that are dealing with PTSD.
Yes.
And they're finding that a lot of these physical practices like martial arts and Tai Chi, yoga, are having more success than the talk therapy in a lot of instances.
Yes.
If these guys are taking up Tai Chi or martial arts, and they're doing much, much better.
Well, the longest journey we ever make is a journey between our head and our heart. Well, well, we're coming to the end of the show, and I want to thank you for being a guest tonight, and for everyone who tuned in to Viewpoint with Father John, thank you for spending another hour with us. And my guest has been Master Paul Schroder, and you can get a hold of him at Kung Fu Sansu in El Paso, Texas. And if no one's told you this week that they love you, let me be the first, and we'll be back next week. God bless.
Thank you.
KCAA Loma Linda. Listen on 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, and 106.5 FM.
This episode of the House of Mystery is brought to you by Legacy Food Storage. The best way to protect your family is by being prepared.